metamorphosis, or golden ass. Apuleius thus describes what in all probability is his initiation into the Eleusinian mysteries. I approached to the confines of death, and having trod on the threshold of Proserpine I returned from it, being carried through all the elements. At midnight I saw the sun shining with a splendid light. And I manifestly drew near to the gods beneath, and the gods above, and proximately adored them. Women and children were admitted to the Eleusinian mysteries, and at one time there were literally thousands of initiates. Because this vast host was not prepared for the highest spiritual and mystical doctrines, a division necessarily took place within the society itself. The higher teachings were given to only a limited number of initiates who, because of superior mentality, showed a comprehensive grasp of their underlying philosophical concepts. Socrates refused to be initiated into the Eleusinian mysteries, for knowing its principles without being a member of the order he realized that membership would seal his tongue. That the mysteries of Eleusis were based upon great and eternal truths is attested by the veneration in which they were held by the great minds of the ancient world. M. Uvarovsks, would Pindar, Plato, Cicero, Epictetus, have spoken of them with such admiration. If the Hierophant had satisfied himself with loudly proclaiming his own opinions, or those of his order? The garments in which candidates were initiated were preserved for many years and were believed to possess almost sacred properties. Just as the soul can have no covering save wisdom and virtue, so the candidates, being as yet without true knowledge, were presented to the mysteries unclothed, being first given the skin of an animal and later a consecrated robe to symbolize the philosophical teachings received by the initiate. During the course of initiation the candidate passed through two gates. The first led downward into the lower worlds and symbolized his birth into ignorance. The second led upward into a room brilliantly lighted by unseen lamps, in which was the statue of Ceres and which symbolized the upper world, or the abode of light and truth. Strabo states that the great temple of Eleusis would hold between 20 and 30,000 people. The caves dedicated by Zarathustra also had these two doors, symbolizing the avenues of birth and death. 2 inserts. From a mural painting in Pompeii. Ceres, or Demeter, was the daughter of Cronos and Rhea, and by Zeus the mother of Persephone. Some believe her to be the goddess of the earth, but more correctly she is the deity protecting agriculture in general and corn in particular. The poppy is sacred to Ceres and she is often shown carrying or ornamented by a garland of these flowers. In the mysteries, Ceres represented riding in a chariot drawn by winged serpents. From Ovid's Metamorphosis. In the initiation of the Bacchic mysteries, the aria of Bacchus is played by the candidate who, set upon by priests in the guise of the Titans, is slain and finally restored to life amidst great rejoicing. The Bacchic mysteries were given every 3 years, and like the Eleusinian mysteries, were divided into 2 degrees. The initiates were crowned with myrtle and ivy, plants which were sacred to Bacchus. In the Anacalypsis, Godfrey Higgins conclusively establishes Bacchus Dionysos as one of the early pagan forms of the Christos myth. The birthplace of Bacchus, called Sabazius or Sabaoth, was claimed by several places in Greece. But on Mount Zelmissus, in Thrace, his worship seems to have been chiefly celebrated. He was born of a virgin on the 25th of December. He performed great miracles for the good of mankind, particularly one in which he changed water into wine. He rode in a triumphal procession on an ass. He was put to death by the Titans, and rose again from the dead on the 25th of March. He was always called the Savior. In his mysteries, he was shown to the people, as an infant is by the Christians at this day, on Christmas Day morning in Rome. While Apollo most generally represents the sun, Bacchus is also a form of solar energy, for his resurrection was accomplished with the assistance of Apollo. The resurrection of Bacchus signifies merely the extraction or disentanglement of the various parts of the Bacchic constitution from the Titanic constitution of the world. This is symbolized by the smoke or soot rising from the burned bodies of the Titans. The soul is symbolized by smoke because it is extracted by the fire of the mysteries. Smoke signifies the ascension of the soul. Far evolution is the process of the soul rising, like smoke, from the divinely consumed material mass. At me-time the Bacchic rites were of a high order, but later they became much degraded. The Bacchanalia, or orgies of Bacchus, are famous in literature. Continued. The following paragraph from Porphyry gives a fairly adequate conception of Eleusinian symbolism. God being a luminous principle, residing in the midst of the most subtle fire, he remains forever invisible to the eyes of those who do not elevate themselves above material life. On this account, the sight of transparent bodies, such as crystal, Parian marble, and even ivory, recalls the idea of divine light. As the sight of gold excites an idea of its purity, for gold cannot easily. Some have thought by a black stone was signified the invisibility of the divine essence. To express supreme reason, the divinity was represented under the human form, and beautiful, for God is the source of beauty. Of different ages, and in various attitudes, sitting or upright. Of one or the other sex, as a virgin or a young man, a husband or a bride, that all the shades and gradations might be marked. Everything luminous was subsequently attributed to the gods. The sphere, and all that is spherical, to the universe, to the sun and the moon, sometimes to fortune and to hope. The circle, and all circular figures, to eternity, to the celestial movements. To the circles and zones of the heavens. The section of circles, to the phases of the moon. And pyramids and obelisks, to the igneous principle, and through that to the gods of heaven. A cone expresses the sun, a cylinder the earth. The phallus and triangle is symbol of the matrix designate generation. From Essay on the Mysteries of Eleusis by M. Uvaroff. The Eleusinian mysteries, according to Hecathern, survived all others and did not cease to exist as an institution until nearly 400 years after Christ, when they were finally suppressed by Theodosius styled the Great, who cruelly destroyed all who did not accept the Christian faith. Of this greatest of all philosophical institutions Cicero said that it taught men not only how to live but also how to die. The Orphic Mysteries. Orpheus, the Thracian bard, the great initiator of the Greeks, ceased to be known as a man and was celebrated as a divinity several centuries before the Christian era. As to Orpheus himself, writes Thomas Taylor, scarcely a vestige of his life is to be found amongst the immense ruins of time. For who has ever been able to affirm anything with certainty of his origin, his age, his country, and condition? This alone may be depended on, from general assent, that there formerly lived a person named Orpheus, who was the founder of theology among the Greeks, the institutor of their lives and morals, the first of prophets, and the prince of poets, himself the offspring of a muse, who taught the Greeks their sacred rites and mysteries, and from whose wisdom, as from a perennial and abundant fountain, the divine muse of Homer and the sublime theology of Pythagoras and Plato flowed. See the mystical hymns of Orpheus. Orpheus was founder of the Grecian mythological system which he used as the medium for the promulgation of his philosophical doctrines. The origin of his philosophy is uncertain. He may have got it from the Brahmins, there being legends to the effect that he got it was a Hindu, his name possibly being derived from F, meaning dark. Orpheus was initiated into the Egyptian mysteries, from which he secured extensive knowledge of magic, astrology, sorcery, and medicine. The mysteries of the Kabiri at Samothrace were also conferred upon him, and these undoubtedly contributed to his knowledge of medicine and music. The romance of Orpheus and Eurydice is one of the tragic episodes of Greek mythology and apparently constitutes the outstanding feature of the Orphic rite. Eurydice, in her attempt to escape from a villain seeking to seduce her, died from the venom of a poisonous serpent which stung her in the heel. Orpheus, penetrating to the very heart of the underworld, so charmed Pluto and Persephone with the beauty of his music that they agreed to permit Eurydice to return to life if Orpheus could lead her back to the sphere of the living without once looking round to see if she were following. So great was his fear, however, that she would stray from him that he turned his head, and Eurydice with a heartbroken cry was swept back into the land of death. Orpheus wandered the earth for a while disconsolate, and there are several conflicting accounts of the manner of his death. Some declare that he was slain by a bolt of lightning. Others, that failing to save his beloved Eurydice, he committed suicide. The generally accepted version of his death, however, is that he was torn to pieces by Ciconian women whose advances he had spurned. In the 10th book of Plato's Republic it is declared that, because of his sad fate at the hands of women, the soul that had once been Orpheus, upon being destined to live again in the physical